Bibi and Tina, the mysterious chef. An overcooked egg. It was an early, radiant morning at Falkenstein Castle. Count Falkenstein Falkenstein and his son, Alexander, had taken their seats in the dining room where Ethelbert, the butler, poured them both a cup of tea. "Thank you, Ethelbert," murmured the Count. He had been working into the wee hours of the night, sulking over administrative matters, and was not yet fully awake. More than anything, the Count was looking forward to a good cup of tea along with his breakfast. Lifting a well-polished spoon, he gave the top of his egg a light tap, then frowned. It was rock solid. Since his butler had already returned to the kitchen, the Count immediately reached for the small gilded bell that stood on the dining room table. "Please, father, don't be so hard on Ethelbert." His son, Alexander, put a hand on his arm. "Ethelbert has so much to do at the moment. I think he's a little overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed?" snorted the Count. "Overwhelmed by what?" Alexander reminded his father that the big family celebration, which was to take place in 3 days, meant a lot of extra work for Ethelbert. Aunt Hedwig from Canada would arrive to celebrate her birthday at the castle with all her relatives. The glasses and silverware had to be polished, the windows cleaned, the floors mopped and waxed. The paintings had to be dusted, just like the books in the castle library, and the guest rooms had not yet been prepared. Butler Ethelbert had to do all of this, in addition to his regular daily duties. The Count nodded. "Very well. You may be right, my son." And he put the little bell back on the table. "It is really a bit much at the moment. Even I am in way over my head." The Count remembered that he hadn't yet found a birthday present for his aunt. Not only that, he didn't have the faintest idea what to get her. Fortunately, there were 3 days left. He knew an idea would come to him at some point, but for that to happen, the Count needed a clear head. And for a clear head, a good breakfast was essential. "If Ethelbert is overwhelmed, I'll hire an assistant for him," he decided. Suitable personnel would certainly be easy to find. When he opened the daily newspaper to search through the job ads, his eyes fell on a news item that caught his attention. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "What is it, father?" his son asked. "Prince Russell von Redwell has been robbed," the Count announced. "In broad daylight. The nerve!" The thief had been unable to steal anything, however, Alexander learned, for the prince had chased him away before he got the chance. "Unfortunately, the burglar managed to escape unrecognized," Count Falco said gloomily. "The police are calling on all citizens to be more alert." He took a sip of his tea to calm himself down, whereupon his lips puckered as he pulled his mouth back in agony. It was horribly bitter. Ethelbert had let it steep for far too long. They simply could not go on like this. The butler urgently needed support. The Count was about to open the newspaper again when the bell rang. "Who's disturbing at such an early hour?" he rumbled. "That must be Bibi and Tina, father," said Alex. "We wanted to go for a ride." Just then, the door opened and the 2 girls entered, dressed in riding clothes. It was Tina Martin and her friend Bibi Blocksberg, who always spent summer vacations with Tina on Martin's farm. "Hello, there you are," Alex greeted the girls and jumped up immediately. "Good morning, Alex," Bibi and Tina chimed. The Count was suddenly transformed. "I've got it," he shouted. "What is it, Count?" Bibi inquired curiously. "Now I know who will help Ethelbert." His eyes followed the line of Bibi, Tina, and Alex, who were standing in a row before him. "You 3, of course." "We 3?" repeated Bibi, clueless as to what the Count meant by this. "Help with what?" asked Tina. Alex explained to the girls what it was all about. "But we're on vacation," protested Bibi. "It's only 3 days, Bibi," said Alex. "Then the party is over." "Well, I would agree," Tina said. "I think Aunt Hedwig is really nice, and I don't mind at all helping her to feel comfortable here." "Well, okay. Whatever it takes then," Bibi agreed. 3 days. We'll manage that." "I really hope so," said the Count. At that moment, there was a knock. Butler Ethelbert entered the dining room. "You're just in time, Ethelbert," the Count addressed him. "Alexander, Bibi, and Tina will give you a hand in the next few days. It has not escaped my attention that you are rather overwhelmed." "Too kind, sir," the butler replied with a bow. Then he handed the Count a message from Hedwig von Falkenstein. Alex's father laboriously stuck his monocle in front of his eye and read. His aunt would arrive tomorrow instead of 3 days, as planned. She had fired her cook, she wrote, who had been serving her nothing but hot dogs and greasy hamburgers for weeks. On her birthday, she wished herself a good, healthy meal. In addition, she would wear the 5 stars of the firmament for this special occasion. The message ended with this announcement. The Count took off his monocle and cleared his throat. He first had to put his thoughts in order. The 5 stars of the firmament was the name of a legendary and unspeakably valuable diamond necklace bestowed to an adventurous Falkenstein ancestor. But since the necklace was so valuable, it was usually kept locked in a safe. How did his lovely auntie come up with such a preposterous idea to travel with it? After all, it could be stolen so easily on the road. In any case, he no longer needed to worry about a suitable birthday present. Aunt Hedwig wished for good food, so he would hire an excellent cook for her, and he would do so today. But where would he get one so quickly? "I could cast a spell and put an ad in the paper," suggested Bibi. "What do you say?" The Count hesitated. "Under these circumstances, very well. You may, Bibi Blocksberg, but just this once." Bibi immediately raised her hands. "Eeny meeny recipe book, a front page ad, we need a cook. Whiz whiz." A loud pling-pling resounded as little witch stars sprayed from Bibi's fingers over the newspaper. As they hit the paper, a large photo of Falkenstein Castle appeared on the front page. Underneath it, the caption read, "Urgent! Count Falkenstein Falkenstein seeks master chef for big family celebration. Please report immediately to Falkenstein Castle." The Count nodded contentedly. "Sometimes magic is quite practical," he admitted. "I agree," laughed Bibi. "May we go now?" He smiled and bid them farewell. It seemed hardly a minute had passed when Count Falkenstein Falkenstein heard them through the open window. "Let's go, Maharaja!" Alex cheered his stallion on. "Giddy up, Amadeus! Go, Sabrina!" The girls' voices rang out. The clatter of hooves sounded across the courtyard as the Count, deeply absorbed in his own thoughts, gazed out after the 3 friends. A chef introduces herself. Only one passenger got off the train from Redwell on this beautiful summer morning, and she was a young woman, about 20 years of age, wearing washed-out jeans, neon green running shoes, and a bright yellow t-shirt. As the train rolled out again, she swung an old backpack over her shoulder and walked towards the station building. Thick, dark curls danced across her brown eyes, which she quickly fixed back with a couple of hair clips. After the young woman had crossed the station hall, she stopped on the landing by the entrance, where 2 older gentlemen sat reading the newspaper in the fine weather. "Isn't that incredible, Doug?" one of them spoke. "Prince Russell from Redwell was robbed." "Really?" the other replied. "Was anything stolen, Tom?" "No. It seems the prince caught the crook in time." Tom shook his head. "But he got away." The young woman came closer. "Excuse me," she said and pointed to the newspaper. "May I see the article?" "Are you interested in burglars, miss?" joked Doug as he handed the newspaper to the young woman. When she had finished reading, she folded the paper and was about to hand it back when she noticed an article on the front page. "Shelter needs money." It was a plea from an animal shelter director, explaining that he urgently needed donations. "The poor animals," murmured the young woman. Suddenly her eyes widened in disbelief. As if from nowhere, a new photo had appeared on the front page. The picture of the animal shelter had disappeared, and in its place emerged a castle with romantic battlements, turrets, and parapets, like something out of a fairy tale. She read the text beneath it. "Urgent. Count Falkenstein Falkenstein seeks master chef. Family celebration. Falkenstein Castle. Master chef wanted." The young woman pondered for a moment, then asked Tom, "Do you know Falkenstein Castle?" "Of course," he replied. "That's where Count Falkenstein Falkenstein lives, a rich aristocrat of the old school. He owns nearly the entire Falkenstein forest." "The Count is looking for a cook?" asked the young woman. "But it's written here." She held out the paper and pointed to the advertisement. "Well, holy mackerel!" Tom couldn't believe it. "Where's the picture of the animal shelter director that was on there?" Doug now took the newspaper out of the young woman's hand and stared at the front page as well, flipping through in disbelief. "Bizarre," he muttered. The woman's face took on a determined expression. "Thank you very much, gentlemen," she said. "You've helped me a lot." With brisk steps, she walked towards a taxi waiting outside the station. "To Falkenstein Castle, please," she said to the driver. Alex steadied his black stallion, Maharaja. "Not too shabby," he laughed playfully. "The way I just blew by you, eh, girls?" At the very last moment, he had won the riding competition. "Oh, cool it," said Tina with a grin. "We just didn't feel like it anymore, right, Bibi?" "That's right. Besides, I felt sorry for you, Alex," laughed Bibi, who had barely finished second. They turned their horses around and rode back to the castle at a leisurely pace. The friends were curious to see if anyone had responded to Bibi's ad. The horses shied suddenly as a car horn blared from behind, but the 3 riders immediately had them under control again. They stopped and watched as a taxi slowly passed by. A young woman sat in the rear seat, looking out through the window with noticeable curiosity. Strange, Alex wondered. Looks like she's headed to the castle. I wonder who that is. I have no idea, said Tina. Maybe the new cook? I thought a cook might be dressed differently, Bibi thought. They gave their horses a light tap of the heels and rode on. When they reached the castle, they saw the young woman standing in front of the wrought iron gate. She had heard the 3 riders approaching and turned to them. Can we help you? Alex inquired after they had stopped the horses. I would like to see Count Falco von Falkenstein, the young woman explained confidently. The Count is looking for a chef, isn't he? Are you a chef? Bibi asked with a tone of surprise, for she had a completely different picture in her mind of how the cook might look. A very good one indeed, the young woman laughed. My name is Marie, she said politely. Alex also introduced himself. I am Alexander von Falkenstein. He pointed to Tina. This is my friend Tina Martin. And I'm Bibi Blocksberg, a young witch from Newtown. Bibi introduced herself. A real witch? Marie seemed enthusiastic. Can you teach me how to be a witch? Unfortunately, I can't, Bibi laughed. You can only learn that if you were born a witch. The friends dismounted and led their horses by the reins to the castle courtyard, while Bibi explained further. Magic is only passed on from mother to daughter. As a witch, you have to learn a lot of spells, but without magic, they don't work. Marie listened with interest. I see. So that's how it is. A pity. Then I guess I'll never become a witch. My mother was an actress. Really? An actress? Tina asked. Is she famous? Well, Marie lowered her eyes. She was famous, but she didn't finish the sentence. A sadness filled her eyes as she lowered her head slightly. At that moment, Harry, the stableman, came to meet them in the courtyard, and Alex asked him to take care of the horses. The 4 of them then climbed up the stairs to the castle and rang the bell. Butler Eckelbert opened. He was quite out of breath and had a cleaning rag in his hand. This is Miss Marie, Alex introduced the young woman. She would like to inquire about working here as a cook. Very well, Eckelbert answered, rather excitedly as he let them in. We'll take care of her, Alex said. Where can I find my father? In the study, young sir, replied the butler, as usual. A somewhat reluctant, come in, sounded when Alex knocked on the Count's door. His father did not like to be disturbed at work. With a furrowed brow atop his irritated gaze, the Count lifted his eyes from the thick, leather-bound book he had just been reading. Alex recognized it immediately as a volume of the family chronicle. This is Marie, father, he introduced the visitor. Without hesitation, she approached the Count and performed a perfect curtsy. Since the Count only stared at her in confusion, Alex continued. We just met her in front of the castle, father. She wants to apply here as a cook. As a cook? At last the Count understood. So, you read the ad in the newspaper, he inspected Marie. You seem very young for this job, my lady, he said. But I can cook very well, sir, said Marie. My name is Marie de Remoulade. My father is Paul de Remoulade, the world-famous chef. In fact, our whole family is made up of world-famous culinary experts. One of my great-grandfathers even cooked for the King of France, she explained, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Oh, the Count inquired with interest. Marie nodded. My father owns several 3-star restaurants. I've been studying with him since I was a little girl, and now I'm traveling to complete my training as a master chef. Really? Remarked the Count. By now, he sounded quite impressed. You seem to be a very determined young woman, Miss Marie. What brings you to Falkenstein Castle? When I arrived at the station this morning, I read your ad in the paper, Marie replied. Then I came straight to you. The Count considered this. I am honored by your offer, Miss Marie de Remoulade, he said. But before I accept, I would like to request a small sample of your art. How would it be if I made lunch right away? Marie asked without hesitation. Agreed, resounded the Count. He asked Alex, Bibi, and Tina to show Marie the kitchen and help her prepare the meal. I suppose you'd enjoy that more than polishing armor anyway, he smiled. Marie also liked the idea. It would be wonderful if you would help me. Bibi and Tina agreed when Alex chimed. Sure, we'd love to do that. As they descended the spiral staircase to the basement, where the castle kitchen was located, Bibi suddenly noticed something disturbing. Her witch's nose itched, even if only the faintest bit. Since Bibi was the last one on the stairs, she stopped for a moment. Something was wrong, she thought. But what? Bibi, are you coming? She heard Tina call out. As if to get rid of the thought, the little witch shook her head and ran on to follow her friend. The Count is thrilled. Wow, cried Marie as they entered the kitchen. Bibi, Tina, and Alex grinned at each other. The kitchen at Falkenstein Castle was up to the highest of standards, equipped with 4 stoves on which 16 dishes could be cooked simultaneously. An impressive range hood stretched over its entire length, and above the marble countertop hung a vast number of pots, pans, bowls, carved oak cutting boards, and other cooking utensils. Alex opened a cupboard from which he took 4 aprons. He tied one around himself, then passed the others to Bibi, Tina, and Marie. Marie also received a large white chef's hat. "My father always wears a cap like this," she sang out, pulling open the massive refrigerator door. "Let's see what we have in here." Marie seemed quite pleased after inspecting the fridge and stock pantry. "At least we won't starve to death," she smiled. "But because we have to go a bit faster today, we'll just whip up a little something." She thought for a moment. "As a starter, we'll go with a light pea soup and roasted white bread, garnished with peppermint leaves. This warms the insides. For the main course, we'll prepare a black trumpet mushroom risotto in Sauvignon sauté on a bed of chestnut and cranberry compote, served with steamed baby carrots and potato gratin. For dessert, a pink pepper raspberry mousse with pistachio crumble." Marie then began delegating tasks. Alex was to finely slice the potatoes for the potato gratin. Tina was to cook the peas in broth for the soup and then mash them, while Bibi was to clean the carrots properly and cut them into even slices. Marie then began the marinade for the mushroom risotto. She melted sugar with a slab of butter and tossed in a sprig of fresh rosemary, then slowly simmered the chestnuts in cranberry compote while skinning the green grapes with a small knife. Bibi, Tina, and Alex were amazed when they saw this. They had no idea that grapes could be peeled. After Alex had finished with the potatoes, Marie layered them in a casserole dish with cream, butter, a blend of spices, and aged cheese before pushing it into a preheated oven. Next on her agenda was dessert preparation. This was hardly the simple vanilla or chocolate pudding like Bibi and Tina were sometimes used to at home. Marie slid open a vanilla pot and threw it into a pot of steaming milk, whereupon a heavenly scent permeated the kitchen. Then she whisked together several egg yolks with sugar in a large bowl and slowly poured in the hot milk. When she added thickener, the liquid condensed into a creamy mass, which Marie stirred continuously over a pot of ice water until it was cold. Meanwhile, Tina whipped cream and Bibi mashed raspberries for the puree, which the girls then added to Marie's mixture before they stirred in the cream. Finally, the young chef placed the mousse in a piping bag and artfully decorated a line of glass dessert bowls, each of which she garnished with a single, perfect raspberry before dusting with a sprinkle of crushed pistachio. Bibi, Tina, and Alex could feel their mouths watering at the sight of it all, but they were not yet allowed to taste anything. The glasses were set in the refrigerator, as it was time to steam the carrots and check the risotto. While Marie put on the finishing touches, Bibi, Tina, and Alex set the table in the dining room and were invited to join for lunch. Marie and Ethelbert would eat later with Harry in the kitchen, provided, of course, that the Count liked it and hired her. Bibi, Tina, and Alex were curious what the Count would say. He took his seat with a rather irritable expression, as the meal preparations had taken longer than expected. But when Marie served the soup and the Count had slurped his first spoonful, his face relaxed. Excellent," he exclaimed. "Downright delicious," he added, before biting into a slab of freshly baked bread. Bibi, Tina, and Alex couldn't agree more. When all the plates were empty, Marie served the main course, the black trumpet risotto garnished with grapes, chestnuts, and cranberries, and the potato gratin with wafer-thin, golden-brown baked potatoes and baby carrots. The Count ate slowly, relishing each bite. His expression became more and more relaxed until a soft smile played around his lips. When Marie finally served the dessert and the Count tasted the raspberry cream, his face took on a formal, almost reverent expression. "Exquisite," he said enthusiastically. "Delicious, Miss Marie. I should think my Aunt Hedwig will also be pleased. And you, my dear," he nodded favorably towards the young cook, "are hired. Now we only have to talk about the salary." But Marie shook her head. "I'll be happy to cook for you and your guests, sir," she said. "I don't need a great salary. After all, it's part of my training. I do only have one small request." "Well, it's already granted," the Count replied. "What is it?" "May I stay at the castle until the party is over?" Marie asked. "I don't have a place to stay in Falkenstein yet. Besides, then I could even prepare breakfast for you." The Count, who remembered the rock-hard egg and the bitter tea from this morning, immediately agreed. Of course, a splendid idea. Bibi and Tina bid farewell and returned on their horses to Martin's farm. When they arrived, they found a note on the kitchen table. Tina's mother and Roger had gone to Falkenstein to do the shopping. Bibi and Tina decided to take care of the horses first. It had been a hot day and Sabrina and Amadeus were quite sweaty from all the walking. The girls sprayed them with the hose, which the animals clearly enjoyed as they swung their heads back and forth, nibbling at the water. Afterwards, the girls rubbed them dry and took the grooming brushes from the stable. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, said Tina, while she led the currycomb in long strokes across Amadeus's back. We can help Marie again. I think she's really nice, and there's something so interesting about her. What do you mean? Bibi asked. She had also just been thinking about Marie. Her witch's nose had stopped itching, but Bibi hadn't forgotten the strange feeling she had back at the castle. A feeling that something was wrong. It was there, but she couldn't put it into words. Well, Tina explained, her father is a famous master chef, and her mother was an actress. I guess maybe she's already passed away, and now Marie travels around and cooks here and there. That's interesting enough, don't you think? Yes, it is, said Bibi, restrained. Tina was overjoyed about the new visitor. It's simply ingenious how she cooks. I've never had anything as delicious as that raspberry cream. That was mind-blowing, wasn't it? Yeah, offered Bibi limply, though it was clear her friend was expecting something more. Really tasty. She tried to sound as passionate as Tina, but without success. This did not escape her friend's attention. Perhaps you witches have a slightly different taste, she said. Bibi knew that Tina didn't mean any harm, but she was still a little offended by the remark. With vigorous strokes, she drew the currycomb over Sabrina's back until patting her mare's neck and whispering tenderly, So, my sweet, now you're beautiful again. Tina's Amadeus was also finished by now, and they led the horses into the paddock. During dinner, Tina relayed every detail about the news at Falkenstein Castle, the upcoming family celebration, meeting Marie after the ride, cooking together with the new chef, and how Marie would live at the castle until the celebration was over. I find that quite careless of Falco, said Mrs. Martin. What? Bibi asked, surprised. Letting someone live in the castle whom he doesn't know at all? That's really not like him, explained Tina's mother. Why is that careless? Tina demanded. Well, haven't you heard about Prince Russell von Redwell being robbed? Roger joined the conversation. Yes, we have. Alex told us something about that when we were riding out, Bibi remembered. Unfortunately, the burglar is still hanging around, said Mrs. Martin. But Marie is definitely not a burglar, said Tina. After all, her father is a famous chef, and one of her great-grandfathers even cooked for the French king. Well, I only hope you enjoy my food, too, said Mrs. Martin. I do, Mother, said Roger, who was already devouring his third sandwich. Especially your butter cake. Bibi giggled. She found it funny that Roger ate his sandwich and at the same time talked about butter cake. But now that's all she could think about. Would you please bake it again sometime? She asked Tina's mother. Of course, Mrs. Martin smiled. Tomorrow, if you'd like. Great, Mum, cried Tina. Aunt Hedwig arrives tomorrow. Hedwig from Falkenstein. We could invite her in the afternoon for coffee and cake. A fine idea, said Mrs. Martin. She got up as Roger had finally finished eating, and together they cleared the dishes. There was no butler on Martin's farm who would do it for them. Aunt Hedwig arrives. After dinner, Count Falco von Falkenstein had retired to his study to examine the family chronicle in peace. Aunt Hedwig would arrive tomorrow, and for the first time in his life, Count Falco would see the 5 stars of the firmament. He had heard a lot about this necklace, but knew almost nothing about it. This he wanted to change by looking it up in the family chronicle. The Count had already started his research in the morning, but was interrupted by Marie's arrival. He now opened the 5th volume of the von Falkenstein Chronicle, a thick, leather-bound book, and read under which circumstances Johannes von Falkenstein, the great-grandfather of Aunt Hedwig, had once acquired the famous diamond necklace. Johannes von Falkenstein had been an adventurous young man. One of his journeys had taken him to India, where he was a guest of the powerful Maharaja of Kashmir. One day, the Maharaja asked Johannes to accompany him on a hunt for a bloodthirsty tiger, which had caused considerable trouble in the area. The Maharaja's beautiful wife, Sita, also came along. But while the Maharaja was looking for the tiger on his elephant, Sita descended to pick a flower that bloomed along the way. At that moment, the tiger roared and shot out of the bushes. Johannes, who was an excellent hunter, threw himself at the predator and defeated it with his dagger. Out of gratitude, the Maharaja gave him the famous necklace, the 5 stars of the firmament, the most valuable of all his possessions. The necklace, as the chronicle reported, consisted of 5 flawless diamonds, of which the middle and largest one bore the shape of a teardrop and shone an unforgettable golden yellow. Soon after Johannes returned to Falkenstein, he met his future wife, to whom he gave the necklace as a wedding present. Since then, it has been passed on throughout generations. The Count closed the book after he'd read this and let his gaze drift reflectively across the room. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. "Now what?" muttered the Count rhetorically. At his command to come in, Marie entered. Her face had an almost frightened expression. "Ahem." The Count cleared his throat in surprise. "Miss Marie." He stood up from his desk. How can I help you? Are you in need of anything?" "No, thank you," replied Marie. "It's just that—" She hesitated. "Yes?" asked the Count. "Well, let's have it then." I can't sleep," said Marie. She had read in the newspaper about a mysterious burglar who was making the area unsafe, she told the Count. Now, it was making her nervous. The Count took off his monocle and began to clean it with a handkerchief. "That's quite understandable," he nodded seriously. Marie did not seem relieved at all. "I hope you don't have any treasures that might be of interest to the burglar," she said. "There are indeed treasures of great value at Falkenstein Castle," replied the Count, fitting his monocle back on. Marie's eyes glowed. "That's super dangerous." Her face again took on a worried expression. "I hope these treasures are well secured." "They are in a display case in the treasure chamber," the Count replied. "Really?" Marie exclaimed, rather excitedly. "Do you think I could maybe see them?" "With the greatest pleasure," replied the Count, delighted, for he was very proud of his valuable collection. He rose up from his desk. "Come." Count Falco von Falkenstein led Marie down the stairs into the castle hall. They crossed the corridor, the dining room, and the picture gallery before finally entering the treasury. The Count pointed to a glass case in the back of the room. "This is where I keep the most valuable things in Falkenstein Castle," he solemnly proclaimed as he led Marie to the display cabinet. She dared a cautious look at the contents, neatly lined up on a velvet cloth. "Horseshoes?" cried Marie. "Those are horseshoes, aren't they?" "Of course," nodded the Count. "The horseshoes of my ancestors. Of course, they're horses. This one, for example," he pointed to a horseshoe that had rusted considerably and was slightly bent, "comes from Leo's proud thoroughbred, and But is that all?" Marie interrupted him, stunned. Where's the gold, and the jewels, and the diamonds?" The Count shook his head deliberately. "I don't own anything like that, Miss Marie. My treasures are the treasures of memory and tradition, if you know what I mean." "Well, yes, of course," Marie swallowed with a look of disappointment. But then she said with a smile, "Well, I can go to sleep now." "I think you can," replied the Count. "Tonight we don't have to worry, but tomorrow," he raised his right index finger, "these walls will house one of the most valuable diamond necklaces in the world." "What?" cried Marie. "Tomorrow my Aunt Hedwig will arrive," the Count explained, "and she will bring the 5 stars of the firmament." "The 5 stars of the firmament?" Marie repeated. The Count reported what he had just read about this necklace in the family chronicle. "That's super brave of Johannes to have conquered the tiger. But I must confess," Marie put her hand in front of her mouth and yawned loudly, "I'm suddenly so tired that I really should go to bed immediately. Good night, sir." The Count was flabbergasted as Marie scurried out of the treasury. Why was she suddenly in such a hurry? "Good night, Miss Marie," he called after her. "Sleep well." The next morning, Bibi and Tina sat at the breakfast table earlier than usual. They had barely gobbled down the last bite when they rushed out the door. The 2 girls hurried to the stable, saddled the horses, and rode off to the castle. They met Alex in the courtyard, where he had already been waiting for them. He told them that the new cook was downstairs in the kitchen. "Aunt Hedwig is coming at noon today, and Marie wants to make something very special," he explained. "Well, let's go help her," said Tina. While preparations for lunch were in full swing in the kitchen, the Count had returned to his desk in such a good mood that even the mounting stack of paperwork seemed to amuse him. When he heard the distinct sound of car tires crunching over the courtyard's freshly raked gravel, he stood up and looked out the window. A taxi was parked by the entrance. My goodness, he was startled. Is that Aunt Hedwig already? He pulled out his gold pocket watch and looked at it. It was just before noon. The Count hadn't noticed how the time had passed, and he immediately hurried down to greet his aunt. Hedwig von Falkenstein had just lifted her leg out of the taxi when the Count approached her. She was wearing a floor-length dark blue dress, a white puffy shawl, and an elegant matching hat. "Falco, darling!" she exclaimed and spread her arms joyfully to greet her nephew with a hug. Then she pushed him a little bit away from her and examined him from head to toe. "You look good, Falco. Very good indeed." "Oh?" The Count smiled, somewhat embarrassed. "Maybe it's the new cook. She's really excellent." "I'm glad," said a satisfied Aunt Hedwig. "I have eaten nothing but hot dogs and hamburgers for weeks. Ghastly. You can't imagine how I've suffered." "But it doesn't show at all," replied the Count. Aunt Hedwig seemed as sprightly, cheerful, and good-humored as always. "Oh, you old flatterer," she whispered and hooked her arm under her nephew's. Ethelbert would take care of the luggage, and so the two of them went into the castle, where the Count served his aunt a cool refreshment in the entrance hall. Aunt Hedwig took off her white shawl and hat, then threw them both in one sweeping motion onto the small sofa in the hall before she herself sat down on it. At that moment, Falco von Falkenstein noticed that around Aunt Hedwig's neck lay a shimmering, glittering necklace with 5 large stones that sparkled as if they were shooting stars. The middle stones had a golden yellow sheen in the shape of a teardrop. "Aunt Hedwig!" the Count exclaimed. "Do you wear the 5 stars of the firmament around your neck?" "Where else should I wear them?" his aunt replied calmly. "Yes, but not in public." Falco von Falkenstein could not believe how careless his aunt was. She had worn the necklace openly during the entire trip. Any halfway clever pickpocket could have stolen it. Flustered, the Count suggested to his aunt that she keep the necklace in his secret compartment until the birthday party. But she shook her head. "Believe me, Falco, it's best kept around my neck," she said. At that moment, the door opened and Alex, Bibi, and Tina came in. Alexander hurried towards Aunt Hedwig. "Oh, how you've grown up, my boy," she declared warmly. She stood up and spread her arms. "Come here and let me give you a hug." Aunt Hedwig hugged Alexander, then took Bibi and Tina in her arms. She always greeted the people she liked best with a big embrace. "Did you come here especially for me instead of riding out in this beautiful weather?" she asked the children. "Yes, and we're also helping the new cook," Alex replied. "Her name is Marie, and she's a great chef," Tina added. "I'm quite pleased about that," said Aunt Hedwig. "Falco has also been raving about her." At that moment, Butler Ethelbert entered the room. "Your midday meal is served, ladies and gentlemen," he announced with a bow. "May I ask you all to take your seats, please?" "Oh, Ethelbert!" cried Aunt Hedwig when she saw the butler. "You! I have not yet given a proper hello." A nervous, wide-eyed expression appeared suddenly on Ethelbert's face as Aunt Hedwig moved towards him, arms outstretched. Welcome, Countess," Ethelbert quickly said. "I will await you in the dining room." But before she could take him in her arms, the butler scampered out of the room. Aunt Hedwig looked after him in bewilderment, but then laughed loudly and shouted as if leading her troops into battle. "Let's go for lunch, my dears. I'm hungrier than a wild bear."